Daria from Art Mat and Films.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much for Video Trust for creating this platform. This is my second time attending the conference, and I was very pleased last time. I really learned a lot, and I was very grateful to be able to participate. So thank you for giving me a chance to introduce myself. My name is Diarra Ndauspesh. I am the co-founder of Artmaton Productions, Artmaton Films. It's a POC independent film distribution company with over 150 award-winning, socially relevant films from Africa, Latin America, Europe, Australasia, Asia, and North America that all explore the human experience of people of color all over the world. Some of the films that we distribute have been released in theaters for films like you may have heard of, like Kirikou and the Sorceress, The Tracker, Mama Africa, Miriam Makeba, The Sleeping Negro, Marighella, Made in Bangladesh, and many more. Some of the films we currently have available on TV and streaming platforms like Showtime, Amazon, WLIW, the New York Arts Public Channel. This is to say that the collection of films that we have, is a collection of films of high production value and that are commercially viable. And these films also have a strong educational value. In fact, Artmaton films are in public and university and college libraries and classrooms all over the US. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank anybody who is listening to me right now who worked with us in the past. Thank you. We really believe in the power of films as an educational tool, and we've strived for the last 30 years to showcase stories that reflect the richness and diversity of the global Black experience. We carry a rich and rare selection of films from Latin America, focusing on the Afro-Latino experience. And this is a rare collection because the presence of the Afro-Latino is officially erased in Latin America. We have, for example, a film called El Mestizo, that's from 1989. That is a race film that is based on a novel from Venezuela. We also have Abolição from Brazil by Zosimo Bulbul, which is a film that provides a panorama of society in Brazil 100 years after the end of slavery in Brazil. And that film dates from 1988. And also more recent acquisitions like Black Mexicans and Sugarcane Malice that's set in the Dominican Republic that deals with the way Haitian workers are treated in Dominican Republic in the sugar canes. So we have a strong Afro-Latino collection. We also have a strong award-winning African film collection. And our latest catalog is available in our virtual booth. And from a practical standpoint, I just want to mention that we sell films on DVD, streaming, or both. That we have created a 20% discount code for the conference attendees. That's also in the booth. And we also have discounts in general. And I'll be available during the conference to provide you with any additional information. Should you wish to talk to me, I would love to share more about our collection. And again, I thank you for taking an interest in broadening the diversity of materials available in your libraries and by acquiring Artmaton Films. Thank you.
Thank you, Diarra. Thank you so much. Looking forward to visiting your booth. So anyway, let me start this thing. I just wanted to say hi and just let you know, I kind of put this panel together. I'm not really going to say anything in particular. I just was very, everyone's interested in diversity, right? It's the thing. It's good. It's good. But I was like, where can I really find a niche for myself? And I thought, well, I'm so interested in film and media. Let me just, in terms of my own job, right? So I really wanted to just hear what filmmakers / distributors / librarians think and how they're working with diversity in their media collections, if they are at all. so some people, it's just the overall collection is the collection you go by. Anyway, I just wanted to get a conversation going to see if, yeah, just wanted to get a conversation going. I mean, and Rachel says, always, I think something like, if you take away something from this, we want you to be able to take away something. We hope you take away something from this. We think you will. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to introduce you to Rachel Gordon, who you see her bio. She wrote the documentary distribution toolkit. It's a great, great, great book. I recommend it. And then I'd seen her on the D Word, which is a documentary filmmakers platform that's really, really helpful, that I visit every once in a while. And she has moderated these panels. Anyway, we talked, and we got together a whole mess. Rachel got together a whole mess of questions to ask the distributors, the filmmakers, and the librarians where they are at on this topic. So without further ado, Rachel Gordon.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Seriously, very, very kind of you. I'm grateful to be part of this discussion, having worked with both filmmakers and with educators. But my goal is not to talk about me at all. My goal is to help you all facilitate the information you need. One of the things that was important to everybody on this panel off the top is to let you all know that diversity and equity and inclusion mean a lot to us, but none of us are experts. We wanted to make that clear from the top that it's important to all of our jobs and we all value it and we all want to implement it, but we are not DEI experts that, you know, no one should call us that. So with that kind of having been said, I thought we'd start off with each person introducing themselves. I don't want to talk for them, and to say a little bit about who they are and not so much what's in their bio, so much as what inspired them to do the job that they are currently doing. And for that, I'm going to start with Amelia at University of Toronto.
Hi, my name's Amelia Clarkson. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Media Collections Librarian at the University of Toronto Satellite Campus, our Mississauga campus. What drew me to this career path is that I love the unique, even frustrating challenges that media collections pose in terms of preservation, access, and acquisition. When I was a teenager, I worked at my small town single screen movie theater where we still screened everything on film despite the growing availability of digital. So helping in the projection booth was definitely a formative experience for me.
Great. Trevor, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure thing. Yeah. Hi, my name is Trevor Deck. I'm the Music and Film Collections Librarian at the University of Toronto. So I do the acquisitions for the central campus, as well as all of our federated colleges. What got me into my role, just always had a real passion for music and film growing up, and studied music and film in university. So after library school, this sort of just seemed like the perfect fit when the opportunity arose. So yeah, that's how I find myself here. Thanks.
Thank you, Trevor. Michelle, would you like to go?
Hi, yeah, my name is Michelle McKenzie. I am, my pronouns are she, her. I am a media librarian for City College of San Francisco. I came to media librarianship through film. I have a background in documentary film production, and after doing that for many years and spending a lot of time in libraries and archives doing research for documentaries, I was encouraged to pursue librarianship as a career, and I've been doing it for the past 20 plus years. So it's been great.
That's awesome. Okay, then we will go to Larissa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Larissa Lamb, and I'm with New Day Films. I'm on the steering committee as their marketing lead. I am a filmmaker. I made a documentary called Far East, Deep South that is about Chinese families in the Mississippi Delta during segregation. And fun fact, my mom was a librarian, so I'm a daughter of a librarian. She used to be the college librarian at Mount San Antonio College, and she graduated from Drexel University with her master's in library science. And I was inspired to go into filmmaking. I kind of fell into it. It was actually partly this documentary. I came out of the music industry, and sometimes what I found is that there are stories that haven't been told. And I think that fits into the conversation we're having today, is that I found a need that there wasn't a lot of history on Asians in America, and that I needed to tell the story. And that's actually why I became a filmmaker, is to tell the stories that from underrepresented groups, and stories that need to be heard and told.
That's awesome. It's amazing that your mom's a librarian. It's so cool. And Miles?
Hi, I'm Miles Matsuno. I also I'm on the steering committee at New Day. I have a film in the collection called First to Go: Story of the Kataoka Family, which is heavily based on my own family history in San Francisco. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor and the Japanese internment camps, my great grandfather was the first one taken by the FBI because he had a hotel in Japantown in San Francisco. So it's heavily focused on my family, and also shedding light on just a part of history that hasn't really been spoken much about, I think, until recently. But I got into filmmaking because, my father, he designed one sheets, and I've always been around it growing up in Los Angeles. And I wanted to be an editor, and found my way into directing, and then found my way into the documentary space after I made my first documentary. So that's kind of a brief intro on me.
Awesome.
Oh,
Thank
and I
you.
serve as serve as the head of acquisitions at New Day. Sorry.
No, I don't want to cut anybody off. Okay, Rosalie, we have you still, right? Your turn.
Yes, yes,
Your
I'm
turn.
back. I'm sorry. I was having technical difficulties. My name is Roseli, and I work for Third World Newsreel. And we are a nonprofit media arts organization that was founded in 1967 by a group of independent filmmakers who wanted to bring an alternative look at what was happening in the activist movement of the late 60s. At the time, there were 3 TV stations in the country, and they were not representing activists the right way. And in particular, activists of color that were not represented in a positive light. So they decided to create a collective to create like an alternative newsreel. So the organization is still here 50 years later. And in 1972, there was a transition from a mostly white male institution to an institution run by people of color. And that's since 1972, 73 on. And right now we distribute media mostly to the educational market, but we also distribute to the semi-theatrical. And in 2020, we have some films on the Criterion channel. And we also have our collection at the Alexander Street Press streaming platform. But we, in addition to distribution, we offer services to filmmakers, including training, fiscal sponsorship, and we have a newsletter with information about upcoming grants. And in addition, we also are trying to preserve our collection of films from the 60s and 70s.
Thank you, Rosalie. See, I can say it right? That was correct. Was that correct?
Yeah.
I just also realized I should have noted at the beginning, there will be time for Q&A. We have a list of questions we are going to all participate in, but there will be time at the end for Q&A. So I believe there's a way you can write your questions in a chat, and someone will monitor them, and we'll get to them later, but we will get to them, but there will be time for that later. I just thought everybody should know that. So seeing as, let's start the discussion off, we'd kind of like to know in each of your own words, and I think we're going to start with Amelia again, whether it be for you or based on your institution, and you can say which one it is, what your definition of DEI is. Not, we know that it's a huge broad term, and not everyone's going to have the same idea, but the goal here is that to kind of create a foundation of how we're all coming to this discussion so that people understand what the kind of varying levels of DEI might be from institutions, different institutions' point of views.
Thanks, Rachel. So I will answer this question in the context of my institution and Trevor's institution, just since we're both representing the same school. So just to provide a bit of context, we're from the University of Toronto, which is one of the largest universities in Canada. We have 40 libraries, that's 40, spread across 3 campuses. So our library system does have a statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion that helps guide the work that we do in this area. So it says that we're committed to creating a safe, welcoming environment that emphasizes inclusivity, acceptance, and mutual respect for everyone. And we're committed to removing barriers to access for all users and increasing diversity in our staffing, collections, and outreach efforts. So kind of all areas that the library works in. And then we also have a longer and more focused document that's specifically about collections diversity. So it addresses how we can strive to diversify our collections by addressing challenges that stem from practices like acquisitions models, how we receive community feedback, the ongoing education of our staff, problematic metadata, and I think most interesting for us today, the way that the removal of physical materials can sometimes erase the visible diversity of a collection. So interestingly, this document still uses a lot of language that really attends to a print collection like books or journals. And it doesn't really take into account how all of these challenges exist and can be amplified when it comes to thinking about DEI and media collections. So I'm going to leave my answer there for now, because I know that when we get into some of the other reasons that Trevor and I are on this panel, we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about how we're trying to articulate what diversity and equity and inclusion means for our media collection.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you. So I would like to go to Michelle about what does it mean, whether it's for you or for your institution or both, if you wish, how you would define it.
Unmuting. Okay. Yeah. We also have, sort of a general DEI statement that covers, supporting students and employees, regardless of age, race, ethnicity, gender identity, disability, immigration status, learning differences, sexual orientation or religion, or veteran status. Since we're a community college, our student body is very diverse, and we're also in an urban environment in San Francisco, which is a highly diverse city. So, our collections are primarily meant to support curriculum, but they're also meant to reflect the student body that we have. And my specific mission, in media collection development is to make sure that the voices of underrepresented groups are uplifted. So I try to make sure that when I'm looking for materials or purchasing materials, that I'm seeking out filmmakers of color. I'm looking to support curriculum by getting faculty involvement in our collection development. So I consider them to be the experts, and they guide a lot of my choices. So, and we have a lot of ethnic studies programs and gender studies programs and differing abilities programs. So all of those things kind of come into play when I'm thinking about DEI for our community college. We also have various campuses in various communities, so that are sort of focusing on those communities, Asian Pacific Islander groups and things like that. So we're trying to kind of make sure that the collection is relevant to those community members, and then also make sure that it supports and challenges, some of the anti-ethnic biases and things like that. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's really expansive sounding. From the distributors sort of filmmaking point of view, Larissa, how do you think that New Day or sort of the distributor kind of landscape defines it DEI differently, or is it similar? Is it connected? How?
Yeah, no, it's really great to hear from both Michelle and Amelia. I think there's a lot of similarities. Just a little quick background on New Day Films, because we are a little bit unique as far as a distributor. We're actually a filmmaker-run distribution cooperative, and so we were started back in 1971. We've been celebrating our 50th anniversary, and we were founded as a feminist film co-op, in a sense that our founders had trouble finding distribution for their. This is back in the 1970s, remember, for their feminist themed films. And so they decided, if we're going to get rejected by a lot of distributors, we're going to start our own company. And so it's almost embedded in the DNA of New Day Films to embrace diversity, inclusion and equity, because that's the seeds of the company. And certainly we've gone on to win. The films in our collection are very diverse and have gone on to win many awards and Emmys and Oscars, including with one of our founders, Julia Reichert, who won in 2020 for her film American Factory. I'm actually going to pitch it over to Miles to talk a little bit more about our approach to DEI, since he used to serve on the Equity and Representation Committee.
Thank you. Yeah, so at New Day, we everything that Larissa had just said, giving the backstory. So it is in our bones, and we are a social issue-driven film distribution company. So a lot of our films, we try to amplify the voices that aren't really heard. It's a big part of our application process as well. It's something that we try to always instill when we're discussing on what films to take in. What voices are trying to be heard. Where does this fit in the educational setting? I know that we will touch on a lot of these other topics, in the future conversation, but it's something that we do discuss heavily, and it's something that we continue to strive, because we do believe that it's very important. And DEI is a very much expansive term. You can go many different directions, not just talking about people of color, but also people with disabilities, and et cetera. So yeah, it's something that's at the very forefront of what we do, and what's something that we're very passionate about as filmmakers, and we think it's important.
Rosalie, what would you like to add?
Yes, so in the case of our newsreel, I'm so sorry now, the phone is ringing. So from the very beginning, the organization was interested in telling stories about people of color. However, as I was telling you before, at the beginning, the first 5 years, only white men who had equipment and were trained to make films and knew how to edit had access to making the films. And around the beginning in the 70s, a group of women and a group of women of color, of people of color, decided this is not working. You are doing exactly what you are criticizing. You are telling the stories about other communities, but you're not letting themselves tell their own stories. So in 1972, there was a switch, and from then on, the organization has been run by people of color. Most of the films, over probably around 90% of the films that we acquire, are made by people of color. And even including our board of directors is mostly people of color, and even the training, all the events, everything that we do has to include that. So it's part of the organization from beginning to end.
So part of what I'm hearing is that DEI is part of all of your jobs at the underlying foundation to begin with, which is awesome. And
yeah, it's everything. Yeah,
very necessary.
The leadership and the board of directors and the filmmakers and everything. It has to
So-
be diverse, otherwise it doesn't work.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So we're gonna part of some of this discussion began because Amelia and Trevor wrote us about the project of trying to deal with diversity in their collection. And they have this major project going on at University of Toronto, and they wanted to explain their project and some of their struggles, and we could sort of all work off of that for kind of implementing more DEI for everybody, right? So did you want to start, Amelia, or did Trevor want to start, or you have a way you're doing this? Sorry.
Yeah, we
You
have a
worked it out.
method. We have a method to our madness for sure. We're really lucky that everyone was okay with both of us talking today. So yeah, Trevor and I were included on this panel because we're currently in the middle of a research paper with 2 guiding questions. So we're asking, what are the implications for media collections if libraries were to stop collecting physical materials? And do physical materials ensure a more diverse media collection? And these questions stemmed from 2 movements that we kind of observed in the media library field in general. So one is more explicit DEI initiatives and collection practices, like I mentioned at our own school. And another is a more sort of implicit movement that we see, which is a deprioritizing of physical formats like DVD in favor of digital and streaming acquisitions. And that comes from what profs are asking us to acquire in terms of format. That comes from physical distributors being shuttered more often, things like that. So anyway, we wondered if these 2 movements that we observed might actually be in conflict. So first we decided to do some research and see if other libraries had asked this question so that we didn't have to get too far into the weeds. We could just point to a nice paper and move on. So I want to point to and acknowledge some existing work that was absolutely vital as we came to this research project. So a couple of papers, Representation in the Collection, Assessing Coverage of LGBTQ Content in an Academic Library Collection by Proctor, A New Digital Method for Assessing the Diversity of Creator Identities in the Howard Tilton Memorial Library Media Services DVD Collection by Tilley and Chapman, and Looking Back, Thinking Forward, A Digital Humanities Assessment of Equity, Diversity, and Representation in 20 Years of Publishing in Cinema Journal by Sims et al. So each of these articles provided a methodology that we could build on for analyzing various aspects of diversity in our media collection. They engage with things like race, sexuality, and gender, both in terms of the content and the creator identities when you're looking at media. But while some of these were focused on a specific format, like a DVD collection, they didn't include this second part of our question. So the diversity and representation across formats. And we felt like this was a key part of our question. So if we can analyze the diversity of our media collection in general, can we say whether purchasing a certain format brings more diversity, for example? So in one sense, we want to narrow our study by comparing our physical and streaming collections. But in another sense, our approach is quite broad because we want to look at kind of all markers of diversity. So this is challenging because at the outset, it's like, how are we defining diversity? What counts as representation in film? Is it the content and characters in the stories? Is it the identity of creators and cast members? What are the ethics when we talk about diversity, of asking those involved with filmmaking to self-identify in certain diverse categories? How does diversity show up in a library catalog record? So what fields might indicate that an item adds diversity to our collection? And then do all of these things even show up in our metadata? So what Trevor and I wanted to do today was just share some of the preliminary challenges we're facing as we grapple with these questions. And I just want to really briefly emphasize that we are in the middle of the research and data gathering stage. And I'll hand it over to Trevor to explain more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Amelia. So currently, well, I'll back it up a bit. In the context of this project, we had the benefit of undertaking a very similar project on the music side of things recently, where we basically took our score collection and analyzed it from a DEI perspective. We did that by using a Python script that would scrape data from sites like composerdiversity.com and Wikidata in order to grab some of that information that isn't available within the MARC record. And so we've sort of used some of that script, and we're attempting to sort of do the same thing with our film collection, specifically looking at our physical collection versus our streaming collection. Now, our initial inquiries have faced some challenges in comparison to the music program or the music project, because obviously there's a lot more complexity around roles within the film. So like, it's not going to be, obviously with music, there's usually a one-to-one comparison of composer to score. So now we're looking more at, 1 to sometimes 5 or 10 different players within the individual film. So we might be looking, and we also are trying to determine sort of who are the power players in the film that we want to be concerned with. So are we looking at obviously director, producers, screenwriters? Those are sort of the 3 main ones we've identified off the top, but is it also worthwhile looking at actors, for example, and other aspects of the film, cinematographers, et cetera? The other piece that is somewhat of a challenge that in developing this script is trying to determine exactly how we're going to grab that information. There isn't a website like composerdiversity.com for film. So we're using Wikidata, but there's a bit more challenges around sort of grabbing that data. We had the advantage with composers in that a lot of our collection, a composer is defined to a certain country, whereas in filmmaking, it might be produced in a certain country, but with a different country of origin for the filmmaker, et cetera. So the lines are sort of a bit more blurred when you're looking at trying to identify these relationships and exactly how it fits in from a DEI perspective. Another piece that we're looking at is by subject heading, as Amelia mentioned. So trying to grab those subject headings if they're there, but for some films they're not. So how do we go about adding that information? So that's just a little bit of a nutshell of some of the challenges we're facing right now. We've got a script that's working pretty good for us, but still very early days in terms of analyzing our collection.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of epic research. A lot of definition creating too, which is kind of crazy. Michelle, did you want to add something?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that for our college, we're relatively small. We have a very small budget. I'm pretty much a one-man band at the school, as far as doing the media, and I do media for the entire college. So I don't really have the resources to do, sort of like extensive background research on our collections. And I pretty much just have to, which I think probably is the experience of a lot of librarians at their schools, where, we don't, especially with media collections, like they're not always looked at as the primary, sort of, a lot more now than since the pandemic. I can say that I've definitely gotten a lot more popular since the pandemic. But in general, the amount of resources that we get is definitely smaller, than our overall collections budget. And then also the amount of participation that I get as far as from like liaison colleagues and things like that, because like we have subject liaison librarians that focus on various areas of the curriculum, and they don't have also a lot of bandwidth to, kind of engage in media selection. So a lot of it is left to me, and I have to look at the collection, just kind of generally and see, like, okay, I have an instructor who's teaching this class on transgender identity, and what do we have, and then I kind of look and see what's there, and then go into the wider world. And we have various distributors, like in San Francisco, we have Frameline and some other sort of specialized places where I can go to look to see what is available. But a lot of it also comes from the faculty, since they are doing that research all the time. So they know, kind of what's out there, and they're attending festivals and and doing all that stuff. And they have, you know, colleagues who are, you know, making media around their subjects and things like that. So I kind of rely on them. So as far as surveying the collection in a very formal way, I don't really have the time to do that kind of thing, but I do regularly go in and you know, and sort of do an informal survey to see what's there. And also too, the other thing in a community college is that the courses are changing all the time, and the course offerings are changing all the time. And so I have to be pretty responsive to what's happening at that moment. And so, yeah, that's kind of my experience.
Infrastructures are completely different depending on where you are. I think that's really important to remember. I kind of wanted to ask from the distributor's point of view, and this time I'm going to start with Rosalie instead of finishing with you. I'm going to start with you. Do you ever find it hard to find the diverse content or attract the diverse content that you're looking for in order to share it and distribute it? Do you find it hard to get the content you want?
There's a lot of content that can be acquired, made by diverse filmmakers, marginalized filmmakers. And the way we sometimes find that content is through more local film festivals, or Latino film festival, or Black film festivals, Asian film festivals, because in those film festivals you will find more independent and local voices which, you know, because within the film festival world there's also this DEI problems, no? So some of these films will not make it to the big film festivals, but they will make it to the smaller local film festivals. So there's plenty of content. Sometimes it's not that it's difficult to find content made by people of color. There's plenty of that, but sometimes what the independent filmmakers are producing is not what the librarians are looking for, or the professors are using, or so sometimes, even though there's a new filmmaker, very interesting, or we think we will love to distribute it, but is the educational market going to respond to it? We don't know. So sometimes that's more of the issue, but there is a lot of content.
Yeah, I often tell filmmakers that not every film meets every market, and that's okay. That's the way it is. Larissa, do you, and I will also ask Miles too, of course, I know New Day I used to work with a lot of New Day filmmakers, so I know they have like a rolling process of admission, and there's a whole process. So, but do you find that you get plenty of the kind of content that New Day wants to support, or do you think you have to go extra and do other work as well?
I think, do you mind if I go first, Larissa? Okay.
I was expecting you to go first.
Okay. I think it's both sides. I think that a lot of stuff does come to us, but I also think that we do put in the effort to go out and do a lot of outreach as well. A couple of weeks ago, for an example, we were just at Doc MX, Mexico City, listening to some panels and pitches there, right? So just making ourselves present and also available for people and giving them the resources that they need to be successful as well in distributing their films. So there are a lot of films out there, you know, whether it's on the big stage or the small stage. And we do look at every angle in the sense of, is this film something that educators want? What is the topic about? And not just the film, but the filmmaker itself, you know, because I think for us at New Day as a co-op, you're not just bringing in the film, but you're bringing in that person as well, because it is kind of like a family, right? So for us, we are looking at everything in terms of what does this filmmaker, what does this film bring to the table?
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think one of the things that's really important in this conversation, and I know one of the goals here at Video Trust is using the librarians here as a resource for us as well, because sometimes a lot of you are very active in your local areas. A lot of you are attending film festivals. So if there are films that you think that don't have distribution, or you're looking at younger filmmakers emerging voices, feel free to refer them to us or Third World Newsreel. We need your help to also procure and expose that that talent to the distribution avenues that are not traditional.
Absolutely.
I think that is such a perfect point for this whole thing, actually. Good thing to bring up. I think we need to kind of just discuss sort of collection development policy kind of in general. And I kind of wanted to go back to Michelle for this, and that is sort of, are there, I think you sort of were explaining to me before that sort of, there's one sort of umbrella collection development policy. I might have misheard you, so please feel free to correct me. But I think you said that media is kind of the same as everything else, but in terms of collection development policy. If I have you wrong, please correct me. So I guess I was kind of curious from your vantage point, if there are sort of some best practices about collection development, or if media should be treated separately or differently, or just some good standards that you yourself use when you're collecting.
Yeah, so we do fall within an overall collection development policy, but some of the things that we have had to kind of pull out that make media a little bit different are accessibility issues, cost effectiveness, and then whether or not for a long time, even being able to support things streaming was an issue for the college. So, that was also kind of taken into consideration when we were acquiring things. And then technical support or software that's connected to, making the material accessible is also something. So that's where the sort of the media part of the collection development policy might deviate a little bit from the general policy. And because we're a smaller, we have a small budget, and we're a smaller institution, I don't have the technical support, so I am pretty much doing everything, right? So I do acquisitions, I upload films into the platform that we're hosting material on, I get things captioned, I'm doing all of it. So in order for that to be sustainable, I have to kind of be fairly selective and strategic about, about where I'm going to get some material from versus, how I might, because I do a lot of outreach to individual filmmakers as well. And I try to license a lot of things directly from filmmakers. And sometimes these filmmakers don't have distribution deals. So, then I'm also involved in educating them about pricing and licensing and what's appropriate and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that, so for a collection development policy, it's kind of hard to kind of nail it down to a very specific, guidelines when, and that might be the same for other librarians too, because depending on their bandwidth and what they're willing to support and what they're able to support, might go a long way in determining what they're able to acquire, right? So, so that's what I would say about having a firm, collection development policy. I try, but again, like I said, my personal goal or my personal mission is to really focus on underrepresented groups and trying to, if I have money to spend, I try to make sure that I am spending money with the distributors that I know, are sort of line up with my mission and goals for our collection. So, I might spend more with one distributor than another because I'm trying to invest in their continual viability. you know? So, yeah.
Which is beautiful to hear. I think everybody likes hearing what you just said. I think that's it's a great way to function, I think. Amelia and Trevor, did you want to add anything about sort of collection management policies, or did you want me to ask you the next question? You choose. I can go on, or you can speak.
Immediately, I sort of touched on our collection development policies at the outset. So maybe move to the next question.
Cool. So the next question is actually directed at you guys anyway. Which is, you know, once you have purchased a film in your collection, what happens to the film at your institution afterwards? How is it used or programmed? How is it archived? Do you get rid of it when your license expires? So kind of what happens once you have it?
Yeah, for sure, I can take that. So generally a bit of history with our collection. It was historically primarily a teaching collection, but increasingly we don't necessarily differentiate between teaching and research. So we're trying to build a pretty comprehensive film collection in both physical and streaming media. We've recently started a pretty comprehensive approval plan with CDA vSource that sort of covers coverage for our major suppliers, award winners, and those sorts of things. And then we also get a whole host of requests from faculty and students throughout the year. Our collections are dispersed from across several different libraries. We have a main media library called Media Commons within our main Central Arts Library downtown. There's also media collections at the University of Toronto Mississauga Library and University of Toronto Scarborough, as well as at some of our different federated colleges throughout the University of Toronto. So, but generally, the majority of our films sort of end up at a few different locations, and they're all shared throughout the library system, so anybody can request anything online and get it within a couple of days. We've also got course reserves available if they're needed for extended teaching periods. And when we're acquiring digital site licenses, we also will make the point of adding the film that we've downloaded, the content we've downloaded to our digital preservation system. So it's backed up onto like 3M spectral tape, which is sort of the highest level of archival tape at this point. So that's a really nice value add that we're able to offer to filmmakers, especially if they don't have a distributor and there is a risk of their film going missing at some point in the next 80, 100 years kind of thing. They'll always be able to come back to U of T in our digital preservation department and ask for a copy of it. We're also often migrating our older formats to different locations. So we've got a large joint library facility offsite that we share with a number of other institutions throughout Ontario and now even beyond Ontario. So for example, we've just deaccessioned about 8,000 of our VHS tapes to what's called Downsview, our joint library facility. And so that's nice because it makes the films available to, or easily accessible to, institutions outside of the University of Toronto as well. And then of course, as the format's obsolesce, we often repurchase them in a more modern format, typically either Blu-ray and or streaming. And as Amelia mentioned, we often sort of, especially for cross-disciplinary studies, get a lot of requests for streaming nowadays. So oftentimes we might have a DVD copy or a Blu-ray copy or VHS copy available, but the room that it's being played in might not be equipped with the playback material necessary, or just using that class time to show a film nowadays, especially coming out of COVID, where there was an increased reliance on watching films outside of class time. So we're getting a very much an increase in the number of requests for streaming access to films, even if we might have a physical copy already. Yeah, and so the film sort of, it exists in our circulating collection. For our physical media, of course, the end of its life is usually once it's no longer playable, if it gets scratched or something. And of course, in those cases, we typically replace when possible. And when it comes to our streaming licenses, anything that we license perpetually, we'll catalog that, make catalog record in our system and link out to the video that way. For any digital collections, we usually try and purchase whole collections again perpetually. That way, it kind of gives us some sustained access to those films rather than subscription, where it might be there 1 year and not the next year, et cetera. But of course, that's not always a possibility. So we do deal with subscriptions at times, and we also deal with short-term digital site licenses when that's only the option. The disadvantage there is that sometimes if it's a 1-year license, that means that we are not necessarily able to catalog it because we don't really have the mechanisms in place to automatically shadow that record when the license lapses. So that is something that we're working on. We actually just moved to Alma last year, and so we've gotten some good advice from different colleagues at institutions as to how to remove some of the manual intervention necessary to be able to shadow licenses when they expire. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Do you have anything to add, Amelia?
Very comprehensive.
Great. Then I would like to hear Michelle's. I'm sure it's completely different because she's she's a much smaller place with involved in 1 billion people.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we purchase is available to the entire campus community. So, we don't purchase things like just specifically for one class or something like that. Like everything has to be available to everyone through, password authentication. And I do a lot of programming. So a lot of the outreach that I do related to the things that I license are, I try to see if I see something that I'm very excited about, that I want to make sure that gets beyond that one class that it's being used for. I will work with various campus constituencies, like we have a Queer Resource Center and a Women's Resource Center and student. I'm also involved with the Student Film Club. So we program things, through the film club, and that helps to give a lot of these titles legs as well, because then other faculty members, sort of discover things that they wouldn't normally have known about, because it is hard to, sort of get your titles to rise to the top when you have so many, so many things. Especially faculty get very overwhelmed when with the subscription services, because there's just so much there. And a lot of times, if it's not a platform that they're accustomed with using or that they're comfortable with using, and all the platforms are different, and they'll just gravitate towards the one and miss out on a lot of great stuff that's in the collection. So I also use research guides and highlight a lot of materials in research guides for specific curriculum. So as I get new titles and that I think are particularly interesting, I'll make sure to tie them into books in the collection and things like that, trying to sort of generate interest. I do outreach through email blast, like every semester, like at the beginning of the semester, at the end of the semester, asking for requests, and also highlighting materials that we have, that we've acquired that semester. But it is kind of like, it's always amazing to me that, like, no matter how much outreach I'm doing, that faculty are like, oh, I had no idea we had this or that or whatever, so it's sort of a, it's a never ending process, but it's also one of the things that kind of keeps my job interesting, is that it's like, I'm constantly engaging, right? So engagement is like, a huge part of what I do outside of acquisitions. And especially with the DEI material, that it's like, a lot of times they won't necessarily see how, oh, there's a connection, or there's overlap, there's intersection here. There are ways that this material can be used that might not have initially, kind of been obvious.
That also sounds like a lot of intense work. I think it could be really, when you get really caught in your own work, it's kind of amazing to hear what each of you are saying in terms of how dynamic and expansive each one of your jobs is. I mean, from my perspective, just hearing what each of you is saying is amazing to me. I'm kind of blown away. I'm gonna kind of go back to distributors for a moment here. Miles, when you are adding filmmakers to New Day, how I know that DEI is important to New Day and it's part of its foundation, but I guess I'm kind of curious, like, how does that get implemented when filmmakers are added to the roster?
Yeah, are you asking what? Can you rephrase that question?
Sure, sure. When a filmmaker applies to New Day, what sort of the way that New Day evaluates how that filmmaker is going to add to DEI or to New Day's mission that involves DEI?
Right. Good question. So, like I mentioned before, it's not just the film, but it's also the person that made the film and those that are surrounding the film, right? So for us, when we get a new film application, it goes through a process. They have to fill up. We are a co-op, so they fill in the application and they put all the information. There's a section on there that talks about being underrepresented and what the film is about, the synopsis, and all that stuff. And that stuff is discussed in the acquisitions team within us, and we talk about the individual and talk about the film. So we do shine light on that, on bringing people, underrepresented filmmakers to New Day.
So it's part of the almost basic requirement of it. Larissa, in terms of dealing in your experience with advocating for DEI and working in that space, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges for creating sort of DEI programming from your perspective?
Well, I think creating the program is the easy part. I think marketing it is where the challenges become. And I say that in the sense that a lot of times when we have this banner of DEI, so to speak, people will think very narrowly. For instance, I'll just take my film, for example. It's about Chinese families in the segregated South. And so a lot of times people will think, oh, it's only for our Asian American Studies department. Oh, we don't have an Asian Studies department, so there's no application. But my film is set in the American South, and so that's pretty broader US history implications, for instance, because it's about being right there in that history that has been traditionally be erased. And of course, our film also deals with the Chinese Exclusion Act and the impact of the film subject is actually my husband and my husband's family. And so then people think, oh, Chinese Exclusion Act, that only applies to Chinese. But if you know anything about immigration history, it actually applies to everybody that's been an immigrant, and even today very relevant to immigration policy. And so I think when we talk about DEI, it's helping others understand that it's not a narrow audience, that this actually, we're hoping we get to that point where we're not having to, to beat the drum, where we're having to say, like, these are voices that are actually mainstream, but it's just society has sidelined them and marginalized them, but they're actually very relevant. They are part of the fabric of the world of America, depending on what your subject is. So we have a couple of programs that we do to highlight topically. We have something called Reframe and Refresh. In fact, our next one is October 26th, and we're actually going to be talking about Latinx historical and contemporary political narratives. And again, at face value, some people might think, oh, that's very niche. But again, a lot of those stories, those oral histories, a lot of those themes are very universal. And it's very important, yes, to have them taught in very focused classes, but also understanding that other disciplines, other subject areas, whether it's political science, sociology, has relevance in those areas.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think you have to, I used to always tell filmmakers, be careful how narrowly you define what, when you're sending emails to professors, how narrowly define what your film is about, because you could be narrowing your audience unnecessarily. Roselli, in your experience with doing outreach for your titles, do you find that you have to often educate whether it's your customers or even the filmmakers themselves about other kind of context information? Do you find yourself ever discussing topics that aren't necessarily directly related to the film, but involve the film? Am I being clear? I feel like I was, but maybe I wasn't. You can tell me. Like, do you think you need to educate people about culture beyond the film that you're talking about often?
Yeah, sometimes that happens. We get clients, and we have to tell them more about what this film represents, how it can be used. And then, of course, there are other films that maybe have the same topic or that could be connected. So yeah, we can always offer that kind of guidance to clients and programmers too. Like if film programmers are looking for things, that's when I always, like, I can tell them, oh, but did you know that this filmmaker we also have their first film and it's connected to this film, and they don't know about it because they barely know about this one film that they're going to program. So yes, there's a lot of that, but more often with film programmers than librarians. What I wanted to say about what Larissa was saying is that sometimes there are topics that we have in the collection, and it's about, let's say, about a particular, let's say a Latino group, no? And for some reason, those films are not as popular. The film that is being told that same topic by a Latino filmmaker, let's say, is not as popular as another film about the same topic told by a non-Latino person. And we're always wondering what is happening. How can you not include the perspective of the community or someone from that community, and you prefer to go and show something that is mainstream and that is not, the story is not from within the community? So, I mean, that's from day one for Third World Newsreel, no? We've always been trying to counter that. And I'm also gonna say here, because this is very important, this kind of DEI movements or moments, this is not new. Every so often this happens. Every 10 years there's a new movement because, oh my God, libraries are not, diverse enough. And then that conversation goes away, and then 10 years later it happens again. Oh my God, what's happening? Why our collections are not diverse? I don't know what the solution is, but it's something that I think I will bet it's every 10 years this happens. And I've seen many waves of this, and it always goes back to, I don't know, it's not important, it's not, or people think that the problem is solved with one movement or one moment, and it's not. It has to be constant. It has to be part of the system, part of the way you work, part of your staff, part of your boards. If you look at your library boards and there's not diversity in there, then imagine it's going to be very difficult to have your collections be diverse too, because not even your boards are diverse. Board of directors, staff, leadership, it's really, and also I like what Michelle was saying about collaborating with student groups. There are student groups in each one of these institutions led by students of color and of all kind of diversity in all these communities. And sometimes these groups, they don't even know that they can go to the library and request a specific film to have a particular story told. Like, I've been having this student from a college in California trying to host a screening of a film about Afro-Mexicans in Southern California. And I keep telling him, go to your librarian, they should buy it. And then you use that DVD or the streaming and host your event. But it's always like, he's always finding all these troubles to make something possible that is obvious. If a student from a film club, a student of color, is getting to you, to your librarian and telling you, I want to host this film, it's very important for me and for my group, then go ahead and pay attention to that and make that part of your priorities.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Michelle, please go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I definitely have, been influenced by our students and the types of things that they're interested in sharing, with each other. And and it definitely helps with my job. And the other thing I was going to just piggyback on what you were saying, you know, coming from being in the film industry, like, you know, sort of from the 90s up until like through the 20s, when it was like, oh, you know, African-American history was very in, and it was a super like hot topic, and there were tons of money coming in to, you know, to fund films, you know, by independent filmmakers about a whole, you know, slew of different aspects to African-American history and culture. And then that sort of cycles off, and then there's another group that's highlighted, and then that cycles off, and there's another group that's highlighted. And so, I mean, I say this to say that, like, if you are interested in diversifying your collections, it's very important that you stay on top of what is being released at the moment, because, and that you get those materials into your collection in some sort of permanent way, whether if that's a permanent way for you is a you know, life of file streaming license, or a perpetual, you know, streaming license, that's great if you can afford that. But if you can't afford that and all you can afford is the DVD, then get that DVD and make sure that you have it in your collection, because, you know, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when someone's looking for that film on Black Indians, you know, they're going to go back to that item, you know, that you have in your collection, and they'll be using that in the classroom to teach. And so, and there might not be another film made on that subject, you know, and the filmmakers, you know, a lot of these filmmakers, and I can tell you, coming from, you know, that world, it can take you maybe not a lifetime, but, you know, what feels like a lifetime to get your film made and released and distributed. And you might not have many of those in you, right? And so, you know, it's important to, like I say, it's just important to sort of seize the moment and make sure that you are paying close attention to what is going on in these spheres, and that you're proactively, you know, sort of adding materials to your collections to meet these needs, even if for now and for the future.
And related to that, so I'm going to skip a couple of questions we had, because I want to make sure we have 15 minutes for Q&A, because that was what was sort of planned, and it's 2:25 now. So one of the biggest topics that all of you agreed was important to discuss during this panel was deliverables, kind of related to what you just said. And so in terms of do the university librarians feel like they have the deliverables they need from distributors? And then we can ask sort of distributors their perspective of what it's like to try to gather all the deliverables that universities need, if we can do that. I don't know if, Michelle, do you want to start, or do you want me to ask Amelia?
Well, I can start with just one obvious thing that comes up again and again and again, is closed captioning. You know, it's a lot easier now because of the technology and things like that for, you know, for filmmakers and independent filmmakers to get, you know, their material closed captioned. But I come across a lot of legacy things that, you know, are fantastic content, and that I really want to be able to share with my faculty and students, but it's not accessible, and we have to have it captioned. And it seems bonkers to me that we're all captioning the same stuff over and over and over again at our individual institutions, and that we don't have like a central sort of clearinghouse to share some of that. I knew for us, part of the problem is to do with funding, because we have grants from state chancellor that like allows us to caption things, but because it's captioned through the grant, we cannot share those with anyone, right? But I have just recently gotten a line item in our budget to caption materials, you know, that we have in our collections. But it's a huge issue, because it can sort of make or break someone being able to use something in the classroom, especially now with all of the online classes and the requirements, for closed captioning. I mean, even though materials had been closed captioned in the past, I don't know, everybody else out there in the audience can probably attest to the fact that how many faculty members were turning on the captioning on the projector to be able to actually make the captioning available in the classroom when they were physically showing it. It was just sort of enough to know that it was there, right? But now it's like you actually have to have it, readable by a screen reader, and it's just a huge issue, and it's something that for years, was just keeping us from being able to make some really, really great content available in the classroom.
Yeah, I always tell filmmakers it's required no matter what market you're going to, because television wants it too. I mean, everybody wants closed captioning,
But I get it. I mean, I get it. And I get that it's, it's when you're making a film and when you're putting all of the things together that you have to do, to get it out there, you're grateful that that you have it done and that it's actually being distributed, right? So all of these other extra little things are sort of like, might not seem a top priority, but it becomes one when I have to say that I cannot purchase a title because it doesn't come with caption.
Yeah, absolutely. Amelia, did you want to add, is there any other like super important technical deliverable that you guys absolutely need to never get?
No, I don't want to just retread what
That's okay.
Michelle was talking about. But if I could go on a slight tangent just for a moment, I liked how this question kind of brought it back to this idea of like, not just how is our collection reflecting equity, diversity, inclusion in our content, but also like the equity of access at the library or at our post-secondary institution. And I think like collecting for media can be truly wild. I would just like to go on the record and say that for all of us. We still have a proliferation of formats in various stages of embrace and obsolescence, and a proliferation of acquisitions and access models even within a single format, and that has direct implications for who can access what at the academic library. So there are lots of issues that come out of this. If we take streaming film, what's the findability? What's the awareness of our available resources? Like Michelle was talking about how much time she spends on programming and outreach. She mentioned the idea that we have many different streaming platforms. Profs will choose one that feels easy and comfortable. Shout out pretty often to Canopy, not gonna lie. And then when they email us, they'll say, this film isn't on Canopy. And then we have to say, have you checked our many other streaming platforms or our catalog? Because we might be purchasing titles on an individual level, right? If we're going back to our physical collections, Trevor raised a point earlier, do our classrooms even have the technology to keep playing the physical materials that we are collecting? Do our students have access to playback materials in their personal lives? So these are just a couple of things that come up. And I think the underlying thing that we've circled around for this whole panel is also cost. And Michelle has highlighted, like, she is at a smaller college. Trevor and I are at a massive university. There are still films that we have to say no to because we simply can't afford them. So if we can't afford them with the size of budget that our university has, what are smaller schools doing? And as we move towards formats like streaming, it becomes impossible to do things like shared collection building or interlibrary loan, which used to save you from having to own everything in your own collection, right? So yeah, I think I don't know if I can summarize this into a neat wish list. Thank you for letting me go on a
No, I was just going to
tangent,
say, I can't actually ask the distributors separately about deliverables, but because I want to make sure that we give people time for questions, and I want to make sure I didn't miss anything important that any of you really wanted to contribute to the conversation. My last question is going to be for each of you to say, and I'll call each of your names so that no one's confused, like if there's anything really important and relevant that you did not get to add to the conversation that you'd want to, and then after that we'll open it up to the Q&A because I know that there's a few questions already. So I'm going to, I'll start with Trevor since you just spoke. Is that okay, Amelia? Okay, go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, I think I don't have a ton to add. I think we've covered a lot in this session. I think a lot goes back to those guidelines from the ACRL, really put in place really comprehensive outline for what we should be thinking about in this area. So things like Amelia and Michelle mentioned, like access to playback materials, keep supporting the technologies that our media collections exist in, and make sure that we have ready availability of those throughout our libraries and throughout our classrooms, and making sure that we do have good lines of communication and ways to promote our new materials. We get so many new films that are just fascinating, and as Michelle's touched on, like you can do all the promotion in the world and it's still hard to reach all the ears that are interested. So trying to think of new ways to advertise those materials and make sure that they're like not hidden. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we see with these just ever expanding collections and limited attention, is just how do we reach folks without spamming them too. So it's finding that balance, I think. And yeah, I find myself going back to those ACRL guidelines for media collections like on a weekly or monthly basis, because there's just so much good stuff and they've really thought about, I think, a lot of the elements that we're thinking about today.
Okay, I think we lost Michelle for a minute, or is Michelle back? Did you have any final thoughts, Michelle, before I go to the distributors to see about their final thoughts?
Oh, well, I would just encourage everyone to be creative and to, when you're thinking about diversifying your collections, to, you know, be, like I said, be creative, and also you know, don't try to be the expert yourself. Like you know, reach out, you know, communicate with, you know, with other groups, and make sure that when you have an opportunity to engage with other groups on campus, and with groups that you might not be super familiar or comfortable with, or whatever, outside of your comfort zone, you know, get in there and find out what they're doing, what their needs are, and what kinds of things might actually be useful to them. And then, you know, sort of keep that in your mind as you move through the world, and and you know, see things that might actually meet their needs. And I would love to be able to say that I can you know, take care of everything all at once. But to be honest with you, what I tend to do is I pick a group and I focus on that semester, and I try to do as much as I can there. And then I'll, like, next semester, I might focus on another group and try to do what I can there. It's like I try to kind of make it as manageable as I can for myself personally, so that I can sort of feel that I'm at least making the effort, you know, to address things, as opposed to just being overwhelmed by the, you know, by the daunting task of, like, having to try to, like, be all things to all people all at once, you know.
Yeah, it is a lot. Rosalie, I know not everybody got to say everything they wanted to during this session, and but I would like everybody to sort of have, you know, final thoughts.
Yeah, my final thought is that even the one newsreel has to face these issues of diversity every once in a while. And for us, it was the closed captions. Forever, for decades, we never had closed captions. And it's because we had no money, and our filmmakers had no money. And in the past, closed captions were very expensive. But right now, I'm happy to announce that for the past several years, we are offering closed captions. And if any of you have titles that you need closed captions for, like past legacy titles, what Michelle was referring to reach out to us, because we have been little by little creating closed captions. Plus, our collection, part of our collection is in the Alexander Street Press website, and they have closed captions, and they also have audio descriptions if people need the audio description. So that was my last thing.
All right, Larissa.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with everyone here today. And really, I hear all the time from librarians their pain points, right? Budget, we heard it in this discussion. Even trying to find titles. And so a couple of things that we've kind of implemented in the last several years is, one, we added kind of collections sales to New Day Films, where you kind of get it bundled a little bit more. And you can do the whole collection, but you can also choose a certain amount of titles and also get that discounted. And our collections team, some of the members are actually going to be at our virtual booth during Video Trust Conference. So feel free to drop in to see them, or also go to our New Day website, newday.com. And then the other thing, we just launched a brand new website where the other thing that people kept saying was like, it's hard to find all the categories, make it easier. So it's right on our front page and nice color blocks, the different topic categories. So if you're looking for specific area, gender studies, you're looking for films on Latin America, you're looking for films on whatever it happens to be, we've tried to make it as easy for people to navigate. So that's another thing that we just implemented that will hopefully make it easier. But we love hearing the feedback. So I mean, anything that can help us help you, we want to continue that relationship. And the last thing I just want to mention is, you know, we mentioned anniversaries, and everybody in the chat was like, yay, anniversaries. Duke University is actually hosting an anniversary celebration this week. Virtually, we're having a conversation with our 4 founders, Julia Reichert, Jim Klein, Amelie Rothschild, and Leanne Brandon, on Wednesday, October 19th. I'll put the link in the chat. If you want to join, listen to our 4 founders, you can join via Zoom. And Duke University will actually be in person starting on the screening some films starting on Thursday. I'll be there on Friday showing my film, Far East, Deep South. So hope you'll get a chance to check that out as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And last but not least, Miles, do you have anything else you would like to add?
I was going to talk about the website, but that was discussed by Larissa, and I think that she did a great job just discussing everything else that we at New Day offer. And so I'm just going to second everything that she just said.
Okay, so so now it will be time for Q&A. Although, Lorraine, are you handling Q&A, or am I supposed to look at the chat and say these things out loud? Is that you?
Yeah, well, I'm looking, everyone's yay, happy, hello, hello, hello. And then we had somebody asking about identifying the gaps in DEIA, which I think that was covered, but since I'm not sure who asked that, I didn't know if they feel like they got that answered in terms of, yeah, what tools.
Okay, yeah. So the question was for librarians, what tools do you use in order to identify gaps in DEI coverage? I think, although it says IDEA, is that different than DEI?
No, it's the same thing.
Okay. Besides engaging faculty, as mentioned, how do you survey the collection in order to first identify those gaps?
Yeah, and I feel like we answered this with some of your questions, but I didn't know if anyone had any other tricks maybe, or whoever asked this question is probably happy. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or I guess Roselli wants to know when you'll finish, when University of Toronto is going to finish their research. She wants to know. It's very useful information. I mean, what you guys are doing is pretty epic and incredible. So do you have like a timeline on when you expect some of your project to be available?
Yeah, I think we're hoping to publish something in within like next 6 months to 8 months, hopefully. Yeah, we've got a pretty decent working script right now, but haven't even started like analyzing the results yet, and we're still kind of fine-tuning the script. So yeah, hopefully within kind of aiming for by the end of the school year, but we'll see. That might be ambitious. We'll see what happens. And yeah, we can keep folks posted on the status of that. We'll be sure to share that out on the Video Lib listserv once it's published. And then going back to the other question, I think this project will help elucidate some gaps in our collection, and that's another really exciting aspect of it, is we'll be able to take a look at our collection in ways that we can't with just looking at MARC records, etc. So
Yeah, no, I'll be really curious to hear what that, because subject headings for films are just the worst. Like, I just want to go to all the catalogers and say, what are you doing? But also, Trevor, somebody wants your Python script, and it better be available in GitHub. They're not threatening. They're just
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to share it out when it's once we've finished. It might take some fine tuning to adapt it for your own institution. Obviously, the script is pretty specific to our collection and our particular infrastructure, but we'd be happy to share out that code once it's ready.
I would also say a lot of people, I mean, obviously you brought up I thought there was only one C word, meaning copyright, but there are two, closed captioning. And everyone has questions about it. It sounds like there's still a lot of issues with it. I didn't know if there were additional questions. It looks like everyone has different ways.
There's also something here about audio description, which also
Yeah.
deals with accessibility too, and how often is that requested in the university college space? Is audio description requested at the community college where you work?
You know, we are, we're so focused on closed captioning right now. The audio description hasn't even made it into the conversation yet. I mean, and it's kind of bizarre to me because, to be honest with you, it's like there's a lot of assumptions that we're making about closed captioning and that it's going to meet the needs of students who have accommodation requests, but unless it's a specific accommodation request for audio description, that's like a whole other level of money, to get something to have audio description done for titles. So I don't see realistically how, unless there's some mysterious funding source that I'm not aware of, I don't know how we would even begin to tackle that one.
Yeah. And I know we only have a little bit of time left, but I am curious, Miles and Larissa, is that a pain? Not a pain, but is it like additional challenges when you make a film that you have to then close caption it, or you've found a way to make it work?
Maybe back in the day, maybe it was, but today we have so many different resources to be able to close caption, whether it's computer generated or done by a person, or whether it's a mix. There's a lot of services now that offer that stuff, different businesses, and even you can do it in your editing program now. So I think that today it's more accessible for a lot of filmmakers to be able to do something like that.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's definitely with we have it in mind, especially I think in the documentary world. And if you have the educational market in mind, I mentioned in the chat, like we actually require it for our filmmakers. Every film that comes into New Day has to have closed captioning. I think there's a move to want to require audio description as well. We're not quite there yet, but a lot of our films, my title is one of them, Far East Deep South, that has audio description that's added as well. And we have a lot of initiatives to make. We have a grant from the DeCapta Foundation that helped a lot of our filmmakers get the audio descriptions in. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to do to make it easier for filmmakers, because I know it can be cost prohibitive.
You're on mute, Lorraine. You're on mute if you're.
Yeah, there's just a lot of chat, and I know we have to wrap at 2:45. So it's mostly good stuff though. Like, yay, everybody's yay. And the articles, somebody, yeah, so there's a lot. That chat remains, I hope, when we come back to this I'm not positive of, James.
Yeah, I can leave the chat open even after we finish the panel, just so people can keep that conversation going. The chat is saved for export, so we can share that with people after the conference. But yeah, no, this is super exciting. I do want to add, just because it was mentioned in a lot of the comments here, that most distributors now, from what I was able to see, are offering closed caption on new titles. It's the same for our collection. Computer generated closed captioning is really bad, especially if it's not English. I just, as a distributor, really want to make sure everybody knows that. If it's not English, or if it's like not just the most NPR based, and any dialect, computer struggles really heavily. But I can keep this chat open. Thank you guys for this panel. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, I don't even know how to wrap something like this. I'm gonna let Rachel wrap it, but I'm just, thank you all so much. It took lots of notes, and thank you for your time. Rachel, any last words?
Me. No, my goal in life is to help everybody facilitate communication better. I feel like if everyone does better, everyone does better. So having worked for a distributor, having worked as a filmmaker, having trained filmmakers on distribution, my hope is that everybody gets something they can use so that they can do better in their lives. That is what I hope has come out of this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Awesome. And just to answer the couple of questions we got right at the end, yes, a recording of this conversation will be available. It will be available to all Video Trust members. So if you're not a member, make sure to become a member, and you'll have access to this video indefinitely. So with that, I will go ahead and let our amazing panelists go. Some cleanup here, just in terms of conference, we're getting ready for vendor boothing. So be sure to visit your vendors. If you don't know a vendor to go visit New Day. New Day is right here. If you have visited New Day and don't know who to go visit, Art Men is right here. You have, if you visited those two and are still wanting more films, you can come visit me at Collective Eye Films. So you have lots of options. You can set up meetings if you want to do like a one-on-one meeting. If you just want to chat, because I see that a lot of people don't have that they want to take like video meetings. Chat is open and you can just chat with somebody. It's just like a one-on-one G chat. Everybody who's a distributor should have that enabled for themselves. If you don't, be sure that you do. That way you can just talk and send links and not really worry about it. Awesome.
Do you want me to have Charles close with our last public service announcement of the day?
Oh, go. Yes.
I don't even know if he's here.
I don't think he's here. For vendors and audience members, the booths don't open until in 10 minutes from now, 12 noon, and you should just be able to hop in. If you have troubles, please go ahead and just send me a little chat, Umbrella. It might be that there's troubles for the first 5 minutes if everyone's trying to access it all at once. So I would just, be patient with some technical issues that might crop up for the first couple of minutes. Oh, Charles is here. There's Charles. Okay, sorry. And then we will let Charles wrap up here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I am. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having some difficulty with my camera here, as it turns out, but I just have a very short message, so I won't take up much more of anyone's time. I just wanted to put out a message in support of Video Trust membership. We're happy to have you join the annual virtual conference. And